Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights and drift back in time. Not to the comforting rhythm of a modern, bustling metropolis like New York City, where the loudest sound might be a distant siren or the gentle hum of traffic, nor will we find ourselves in the quiet, comforting routine of a suburban home in, say, Boise, Idaho, where the most dangerous thing you might encounter is a particularly stubborn stain on the carpet. Instead, we're plunging into the dark, often brutal, world of medieval shadows, a place where life was cheap, allegiances were fickle, and every whispered secret could mean the difference between life and a swift, violent end. We're going to explore why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more. You might picture sleek, silent figures gliding through moonlit streets. But trust me, tonight you'll discover a reality far grittier, bloodier, and more terrifyingly precarious. You'd probably find yourself longing for the mundane safety of a quiet night in, say, a tranquil cabin in the vast wilderness of Montana, within minutes of imagining yourself tasked with such a grim profession. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself, now, a young man or woman in 13th century Paris, France. Perhaps akin to a struggling immigrant trying to make a living in the harsh, unregulated underworld of 19th century New York City's Five Points neighborhood. You're not a knight, nor a merchant, nor a peasant toiling in the fields. Your path, whether chosen or forced upon you, is one shrouded in secrecy, bathed in shadow, and perpetually teetering on the edge of unimaginable danger. The world you inhabit is not one of honor codes and chivalry, but of whispers, poisons, and the cold glint of steel. This is not the noble, romanticized image of a spy in a modern action movie, sleek and technologically advanced, effortlessly blending into high society at a gala in, say, Monaco. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound assault on your sense of security and your very soul. Consider yourself a nervous figure, cloaked in the shadows of a narrow alleyway, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you watch your target. Knowing that one wrong move means not just failure, but likely a brutal, agonizing death. Your body bracing for the inevitable violence of your grim vocation. Or perhaps a concerned parent in a small, isolated mining town in rural Pennsylvania, hearing whispers of fixers and cleaners who operate outside the law, recognizing the detached efficiency with which fear spreads through the isolated communities, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those living on the cusp of an untamed wild. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply watching a detective show on a safe. Comfortable sofa in a brightly lit modern apartment in, say, suburban Seattle, Washington. The hushed whispers among your fellow conspirators, once a gentle murmur of shared fears, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant footsteps. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of damp stone and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying encounters. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on primitive caution and profound terror. This is the pervasive, often terrifying, reality of shadows calling. A grim vocation, where the very essence of medieval life was not about profound emotional fulfillment or intellectual enlightenment, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to survive in a world defined by violence and betrayal, transforming a life of quiet stability into a terrifying, ill-fated struggle for personal security, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting comfort often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every whispered secret a testament to their desperate fear and every shadowed corner a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound terror. When you think of a medieval assassin today, your mind might conjure images from video games or fantasy novels. A master of stealth, a silent killer with incredible agility and an arsenal of high-tech gadgets. But the reality of being an assassin in the medieval period was far more brutal, far less glamorous, and profoundly more dangerous. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more, focusing first on the pervasive dread of shadows calling a grim vocation. A common historical truth is that while the romanticized image of medieval assassins as highly skilled, organized, and morally ambiguous figures persists in popular culture, the reality was often far grimmer. Assassinations were typically acts of brutal necessity, carried out by desperate individuals or small, loosely organized groups using crude methods, with little chance of escape or long-term anonymity. And the profession was characterized by immense personal risk, pervasive distrust, and a near-certain violent end. A stark contrast to modern interpretations. Historians still widely debate the precise level of organization and ideological motivation behind historical assassin groups like the Nizari Ismailis, often mistakenly called assassins, and whether their methods were truly more sophisticated than those employed by other politically motivated killers of the era. Imagine yourself then living in a world where justice was often swift and brutal, and power struggles were settled not by legal debate, but by steel and subterfuge. If you found yourself drawn into, or forced into, the grim vocation of an assassin, you were entering a life defined by constant vigilance and imminent danger. Your targets were often powerful individuals, nobles, rival merchants, political figures, and whose demise would send shockwaves through society. The stakes were always life or death, not just for your target, but for you. This isn't the careful planning of a modern special operations team with satellite intelligence and advanced weaponry in, say, a remote training facility in Nevada. This is raw, visceral, and deeply disturbing. A profound plunge into a world where survival was a daily gamble. It truly sucked to constantly look over your shoulder. The reasons one might become an assassin were varied, but rarely glamorous. Perhaps you were a desperate peasant, forced into service by a powerful lord to eliminate a rival. Maybe you were a disgraced soldier, seeking a new purpose, however dark. Or perhaps you were simply an individual with no other options, driven by poverty or revenge. This was not a career chosen for glory or fame, but for survival, or out of a desperate, perhaps misguided sense of duty. The calling was rarely noble. It was almost always grim. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about Shadow's calling. A grim vocation is the curious phenomenon of assassins' guilds and their hidden sigils, where, in some particularly desperate and lawless medieval cities across Europe, a few loosely organized, clandestine groups of assassins were rumored to exist, operating more like desperate criminal gangs than professional organizations. These groups would sometimes employ crude, secret symbols or specific hand gestures to identify one another in the underworld. Not as official guild crests, but as deeply personal, clandestine identifiers that hinted at a brutal hierarchy and a silent, unspoken acknowledgement of their shared, perilous trade, often passed down through word of mouth and fear. Imagine yourself a nervous newcomer, trying to discern a subtle gesture in a crowded tavern, hoping to find a contact, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden dangers that lurked even within their own ranks. It truly sucked to try and figure out who was on your side. The life of an assassin was one of profound isolation. You couldn't trust anyone, not truly. Your clients were dangerous, and your fellow assassins, and if you had any, were rivals or potential betrayers. The common populace viewed you with a mixture of fear and revulsion. If they even suspected your true nature, you lived in the shadows, your existence a constant secret. This constant paranoia, this inability to form genuine human connections, was a heavy burden, a profound psychological toll. This profound loneliness was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of social isolation. With modern therapy and online social networks in a modern, brightly lit and technologically advanced society, historians still widely debate the precise extent to which medieval assassin groups operated with a coherent ideology or political agenda, and whether their actions were primarily driven by mercenary motives or genuine religious political fervor in specific historical contexts. The moral landscape of an assassin was also a desolate one. You were taking a human life, often for money or power, and in a deeply religious society. This carried immense spiritual weight. The fear of damnation, of eternal torment, would have been a constant companion, adding another layer of psychological torment to an already brutal existence. There was no glory in this work, no true redemption, only the fleeting satisfaction of a job done, quickly followed by the gnawing dread of the next. As you consider Shadow's calling, a grim vocation, you begin to understand that for those who walked the path of a medieval assassin, life was a continuous tightrope walk over an abyss of danger, distrust, and despair. The whispered secrets, the glint of the blade, the cold calculations, all were terrifying harbingers of doom, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The shadows they embraced were not just physical cover. They were the terrifying symphony of a world steeped in violence and fear, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of Shadow's calling. A grim vocation, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of a life defined by constant vigilance and profound isolation. If Chapter 1 set the terrifying stage for their tormented existence, tonight we'll plunge deeper into the chilling specifics of their trade, the tools of the trade, primitive poisons and blades. We're going to explore the stark, often horrifying, reality of the crude, yet deadly, instruments at their disposal, contemplating how these individuals already battling fear and superstition face the chilling prospect of wielding unreliable weapons and concocting unstable poisons, transforming an act of violence into a desperate gamble, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the pursuit of ultimate effectiveness often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on primitive methods and profound uncertainty, making every sharpened edge a testament to their desperate intent, and every prepared concoction a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. Imagine yourself, now, a silent figure in a dimly lit workshop in 14th century Venice, Italy, perhaps akin to a desperate chemist in a hidden, makeshift lab during the Prohibition era in Chicago, Illinois. You've taken on the grim mantle of an assassin, a terrifying thought. After Chapter 1, and now you must prepare. There are no sleek factory-produced firearms, no advanced tranquilizers, no meticulously crafted gadgets from a state-of-the-art laboratory in, say, suburban Silicon Valley, California. Instead, your tools are forged by hand, often crudely, and your poisons concocted from whatever raw, unpredictable ingredients you can gather. The air in your workspace is thick with the scent of raw iron, pungent herbs, and something else, something acrid and unsettling. The smell of dangerous concoctions. This is not the comforting precision of a modern surgeon's scalpel, or the sterile efficiency of a modern pharmaceutical laboratory. This is raw, unpredictable, and deeply disturbing. A profound exercise in desperate improvisation. Consider yourself a nervous figure, honing a blade by flickering lamplight, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you carefully grind a handful of suspicious-looking berries, knowing that the effectiveness of your tools is uncertain, and their failure means your demise. Your body bracing for the inevitable, brutal consequences of primitive technology or perhaps a concerned operative in a clandestine operation during the American Revolutionary War, meticulously sharpening a bayonet and preparing crude black powder charges. Recognizing the detached efficiency with which desperation drives invention, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those operating on the fringes of an untamed conflict. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply ordering specialized equipment from a trusted supplier in a brightly lit modern industrial complex in, say, suburban Detroit, Michigan, the hushed whispers among your fellow practitioners. Once a gentle murmur of shared fears, now mingle with the chilling sounds of metal on whetstone. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of potent chemicals and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying failures, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate effectiveness often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on primitive tools and profound uncertainty. This is the pervasive, often terrifying reality of tools of the trade, primitive poisons and blades, where the very essence of medieval life was not about profound technological advancement or intellectual enlightenment, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to inflict harm in a world defined by crude instruments and terrifying unpredictability, transforming an act of violence into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal security, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting success often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every imperfect tool a testament to their desperate intent, and every prepared concoction a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. When you think of the tools an assassin might use today, you picture silenced pistols, explosive devices, or advanced surveillance tech. But for a medieval assassin, their arsenal was far more rudimentary, yet no less terrifying in its intent. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin, and more, focusing on the chilling reality of tools of the trade, primitive poisons and blades. A common historical truth is that medieval assassins primarily relied on readily available, crude, yet often brutally effective, close combat weapons such as daggers, knives, and short swords, complemented by poisons derived from natural sources like hemlock, belladonna, or arsenic, which were often inconsistent in potency and difficult to administer discreetly, making the act of assassination a high-risk endeavor dependent on opportunity, proximity, and desperate improvisation rather than sophisticated weaponry or precise chemical agents. Historians still widely debate the precise efficacy and widespread use of various medieval poisons in assassination attempts, and whether the documented failures were more often due to inaccurate dosages, early detection, or the targeted individual's unexpected physiological resistance. Imagine yourself then tasked with eliminating a powerful noble in a fortified castle. You can't simply shoot them from a distance. You have to get close. Dangerously close. Your primary weapon is often a dagger, a short, easily concealed blade, perhaps sharpened to a razor's edge. This isn't the specialized, silent combat knife of a modern military operative, designed for surgical precision. This is a basic piece of sharpened metal, relying entirely on your strength, speed, and precision in a chaotic, unpredictable situation. A clumsy strike, a missed vital organ, and suddenly, you're in a desperate hand-to-hand struggle for your life against armed guards. It truly sucked to rely on a small knife. Beyond daggers, a medieval assassin might employ a short sword, or even a modified axe for more direct, brutal encounters. Though these were harder to conceal, the key was surprise and overwhelming force in that crucial first moment. These weren't elegant dueling weapons. They were instruments of sudden, brutal violence. Imagine the sickening crunch of bone as your blade finds its mark, or the desperate struggle as your target fights back, their screams echoing in the silence. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about tools of the trade. Primitive poisons and blades is the curious phenomenon of poisoned rings with retractable needles, where in some particularly desperate and paranoid medieval circles across parts of Italy or France, assassins or conspirators were rumored to possess or attempt to craft rings containing a small, hidden compartment for a dose of potent, fast-acting poison, which could be released through a tiny, spring-loaded needle or pin, allowing for a discreet and often fatal prick. This was not a common or reliable method, but a deeply personal, clandestine attempt at a subtle kill, highlighting the pervasive fear of detection and the desperate lengths to which individuals would go for a secret assassination, often with gruesome and unreliable results. Imagine yourself carefully adjusting a heavy, ornate ring, feeling the tiny, almost invisible pin against your finger, knowing its deadly purpose, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden dangers they carried on their own person. It truly sucked to carry a poison ring. Poisons were another crucial, albeit highly unpredictable, part of the assassin's toolkit. Unlike modern synthetic compounds, medieval poisons were derived from natural sources, plants like hemlock, famously used by the Greeks, but still relevant. Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, and foxglove, or minerals like arsenic and mercury. The problem: consistency. The potency of these natural toxins varied wildly depending on the plant's growth conditions, how it was prepared, and the specific dosage. Administering them discreetly was another challenge. You couldn't just slip a tasteless, odorless substance into a drink. Medieval palates were used to strong flavors, and detection was a real risk. A slightly bitter taste, an unusual color, and your entire operation could be compromised, leading to immediate suspicion, torture, and death. This profound unpredictability was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of food contamination with modern food safety regulations and scientific toxicology in a modern, brightly lit and scientifically informed society. Historians still widely debate the precise knowledge and sophisticated application of specific antidotes for common medieval poisons among physicians and alchemists of the era, and whether any truly effective countermeasures existed beyond rudimentary emetics or prayer. Consider the desperate situations. You might need to slip poison into a lord's wine during a banquet, hoping he doesn't notice the strange tang. Or perhaps you'd coat a blade with a slow-acting toxin, praying it wouldn't be discovered until it was too late. The risk of accidental self-poisoning was also ever present for the assassin handling these dangerous concoctions. Imagine a momentary lapse of concentration, a careless touch, and suddenly, you are your own victim, writhing in agony. The lack of forensic science also worked both for and against the assassin. While it was harder to definitively prove poisoning, it also meant that strange illnesses or sudden deaths were often attributed to divine punishment, witchcraft, or simply bad luck, rather than a targeted assassination. This could provide a degree of plausible deniability, but it also meant that the assassin operated in a world where true success often meant being utterly undetectable, leaving no trace. The very nature of their tools demanded it. As you consider tools of the trade, primitive poisons and blades, you begin to understand that for those who walked the path of a medieval assassin, their very instruments were extensions of their desperation and their profound vulnerability. The crude blades, the unpredictable poisons, the constant risk of failure, all were terrifying harbingers of doom, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The clink of steel and the scent of bitter herbs were not just the sounds and smells of their grim work. They were the terrifying symphony of a world steeped in violence and uncertainty, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of tools of the trade. Primitive poisons and blades, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of wielding unreliable instruments in a desperate gamble for survival. If Chapter 2 explored the crude methods of their dark craft, Tonight we'll delve into an equally perilous, yet often overlooked aspect of their existence. Hiding in plain sight, the disguised dilemma. We're going to explore the stark, often paranoid, reality of trying to blend seamlessly into medieval society, contemplating how individuals, already battling fear and superstition, face the chilling prospect of maintaining a convincing facade in a world without modern forensics or widespread anonymity, transforming every interaction into a potential exposure and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the pursuit of ultimate stealth often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on constant deception and profound vulnerability, making every hurried glance a testament to their desperate fear and every innocent question a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. Imagine yourself now, a silent figure slipping through the crowded marketplace of 15th century London, England, perhaps akin to an undercover agent in a small, insular town in rural Mississippi during the 1960s, where everyone knows everyone else's business. You've just completed a dangerous task, a close call, as you recall from chapters 1 and 2, and now the most critical part of your mission begins disappearing. There are no advanced prosthetic masks, no biometric scanners to fool, no anonymous online identities to create in a modern, technologically advanced surveillance state like, say, contemporary Beijing, China. Instead, your disguise relies on basic clothing, a changed gait, a practiced accent, and most importantly, an unshakable nerve. The very air around you seems to hum with suspicion. Every passerby a potential informant, every unguarded word a fatal mistake. This is not the comforting anonymity of a sprawling modern city where millions of faces blend into a blur. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound exercise in psychological warfare against yourself and everyone you meet. Consider yourself a nervous figure, pulling your hood lower, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as a local guard's eyes linger on you for a moment too long. Knowing that your life depends on maintaining an utterly flawless facade, your body bracing for the inevitable. Brutal exposure if your disguise fails, or perhaps a concerned detective, operating undercover in a tightly knit criminal organization in Boston, Massachusetts. Recognizing the detached efficiency with which paranoia spreads through any clandestine group. Forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those living a double life in the shadow of constant discovery. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply adopting a new persona on a safe, comfortable social media platform in a brightly lit modern apartment in, say, suburban San Francisco, California. The hushed whispers among the common folk, once a gentle murmur of daily gossip, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant bells, the pervasive, almost palpable ascent of wood smoke and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying betrayal, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate anonymity often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on constant deception and profound vulnerability. This is the pervasive, often terrifying, reality of hiding in plain sight. The disguise dilemma, where the very essence of medieval survival was not about profound personal expression or social acceptance, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to become nobody, transforming every interaction into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal security, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting anonymity often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every innocent glance a testament to their desperate fear and every simple question a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. When you think of spies or undercover agents today, you imagine advanced technology, sophisticated surveillance, and intricate false identities backed by massive intelligence networks. But for a medieval assassin, or anyone trying to disappear into a crowd after a violent act, disguise was a far more perilous and primitive art form. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more, focusing on the chilling reality of hiding in plain sight, the disguise dilemma. The disguise. A common historical truth is that effective disguise in medieval society was profoundly difficult due to limited means of transportation, smaller, more localized communities, and the absence of widespread identification systems. Individuals attempting to hide in plain sight largely relied on altering their appearance with basic clothing changes, adopting regional dialects or accents, and meticulously observing local customs, but remained highly vulnerable to recognition, particularly in areas where their faces or former identities were known, making long-term anonymity almost impossible for anyone involved in high-profile criminal acts. Historians still widely debate the precise effectiveness of medieval passports or travel permits in regulating movement and identifying individuals, and whether their primary purpose was for security or simply for taxation and administrative control. Imagine yourself, then, having just committed an act of violence in a crowded street or a noble's court. Panic, chaos, and pursuit are imminent. Your first instinct is to disappear. But how in medieval Europe? Society was far less anonymous than it is today. People largely lived and died in the same village or town. Strangers stood out. A new face was noticed. A foreign accent was immediately distinguishable. You couldn't just walk into a different district and instantly become a different person. This isn't the vast, bustling anonymity of a modern metropolis like, say, Tokyo, Japan, where you can blend into millions of faces. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound struggle against the very fabric of medieval social life. It truly sucked to be so recognizable. Your disguise would be crude by modern standards. Perhaps you'd shed an outer cloak, discard a distinctive hat, or try to muddy your boots to appear like a peasant. If you were truly skilled, you might alter your posture, adopt a limp, or even change the way you spoke. A different regional accent could be learned, though poorly mimicked accents often drew more suspicion than none at all. The goal was not to become someone else entirely, but to become nobody, an unremarkable, easily forgotten face in the crowd, a fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about hiding in plain sight. The disguise dilemma is the curious phenomenon of assassins mimicking street performers or beggars, where, in some particularly desperate medieval urban centers across Italy or France, individuals tasked with close proximity assassinations would sometimes attempt to blend in by temporarily adopting the role of a street performer, a minstrel, or a common beggar, not as a reliable long-term disguise, but as a deeply personal to clandestine attempt to gain close access to their target without immediate suspicion, often involving crude theatricality and a silent, unspoken acknowledgement of their profound humiliation and risk in adopting such a lowly social status for deadly ends. Imagine yourself, playing a clumsy tune on a lute or begging for alms, feeling the shame and the terror of discovery in equal measure. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden extremes they would go to. It truly sucked to pretend to be a beggar. Clothing was your primary tool. If you were normally a well-dressed agent of a noble, you might quickly change into the coarse, drab garments of a common laborer or a traveling pilgrim. The key was to have multiple layers, easily shed or altered. But even then, the cut of the cloth, the quality of the stitching, or even the type of mud on your shoes could betray your true station to a keen observer. Imagine the constant tension of knowing every detail of your appearance could be a fatal flaw. This profound attention to detail was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply creating a new social media profile in a modern, brightly lit and technologically advanced society. Historians still widely debate the precise effectiveness of medieval sumptuary laws regulating clothing based on social status, in preventing individuals from adopting disguises outside their class, and whether these laws were primarily intended for social control or for genuine security purposes. Then there was the challenge of behavior. An assassin, even in disguise, had to avoid drawing attention. That meant walking like the common folk, knowing the local slang, and understanding the unwritten social rules. A noble's posture, a soldier's gait, a scholar's precise speech. These were ingrained habits that were difficult to shed, and any deviation from the expected behavior of your assumed identity could raise immediate alarm. One wrong gesture, one misplaced word, and your cover could be blown. The biggest dilemma was the sheer lack of anonymity. News traveled slowly, but it did travel. Descriptions of criminals, however vague, would be passed from town to town. If your face had been seen, or if your true identity was known to even a few people in the underworld, your chances of long-term survival were slim. You might change your name, move to a distant city, but the shadow of your past would always follow. There was no clean slate, no digital footprint to erase. Your face was your identity. And in a society where faces were largely known, hiding was an exhausting, terrifying, and often futile endeavor. As you consider hiding in plain sight, the disguise dilemma, you begin to understand that for those who lived a life in the shadows, every interaction, every glance, every word spoken was a profound gamble. The crude disguises, the constant fear of recognition, the crushing weight of deceit, all were terrifying harbingers of doom. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The bustling streets were not just thoroughfares, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate performance. A constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of hiding in plain sight. The disguise dilemma, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of every interaction being a potential exposure. If Chapter 3 explored the perilous art of blending in, tonight we'll delve into the heart of the assassin's mission itself, the perilous pursuit, tracking, and escape. We're going to explore the stark, often agonizing reality of meticulously stalking a target through the chaotic and unpredictable medieval world, contemplating how individuals, already battling fear and superstition, face the chilling prospect of long, arduous waits, sudden bursts of violence, and desperate, high-stakes escapes, transforming a planned operation into a relentless test of endurance and ingenuity, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the pursuit of a successful kill often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on relentless patience and profound risk, making every shadowed alley a testament to their desperate caution, and every fleeting glimpse a silent but a disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. Imagine yourself, now, a silent predator in the labyrinthine streets of 12th century Cairo, Egypt, perhaps akin to a relentless detective on the trail of a cunning fugitive through the bustling, unforgiving streets of 1940s Chicago, Illinois. You've overcome the psychological burden of your grim calling from Chapter 1, mastered the crude tools of your trade from Chapter 2, and even managed to adopt a convincing disguise from Chapter 3. Now, the ultimate test begins: finding your target, and then escaping with your life. There are no GPS trackers, no high-resolution surveillance cameras, no rapid response police forces to manage the chaos in a modern, technologically advanced urban environment like, say, contemporary Dubai, UAE. Instead, you rely on whispers, patience, keen observation, and your own physical prowess. The air is thick with the scent of spices, refuse, and the palpable tension of a city teeming with life, yet hiding countless secrets. This is not the clean, precise execution of a digital hack from the safety of a remote server farm. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with the unpredictable ebb and flow of human activity. Consider yourself a nervous figure, hunkered down in a dark alcove, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as your target's retinue passes by, knowing that every detail, every routine, must be meticulously observed. your body bracing for the inevitable, chaotic moment of truth, and the desperate flight that must follow. Or perhaps a concerned operative, conducting surveillance on a dangerous cartel leader in the bustling streets of Medellin. Colombia, recognizing the detached efficiency with which patience is rewarded and mistakes are punished. Forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those operating on the fringes of constant danger. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply tracking a package with a modern delivery service in a brightly lit modern office in, say, suburban Atlanta, Georgia? The hushed whispers among the street vendors, once a gentle murmur of daily commerce, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant shouts. The pervasive, almost palpable scent of human desperation and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying confrontation. Thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate success often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing reliance on relentless patience and profound risk. This is the pervasive, often terrifying, reality of the perilous pursuit, tracking, and escape, where the very essence of medieval survival was not about profound personal expression or social acceptance, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to achieve a singular, violent goal, transforming every shadow into a potential hiding place and every crowded street into a labyrinth of danger. When you think of a pursuit today, you might imagine a car chase, a foot race through a modern city, or a digital hunt across the internet. But for a medieval assassin, tracking a target and then escaping a scene was a grueling, low-tech, and incredibly dangerous endeavor, demanding immense patience, keen senses, and brutal physical endurance. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more, focusing on the chilling reality of the perilous pursuit, tracking, and escape. A common historical truth is that medieval assassins typically engaged in prolonged periods of observation and reconnaissance to ascertain their target's routines, vulnerabilities, and potential escape routes, relying on rudimentary methods such as following on foot, bribing servants for information, or exploiting local knowledge. The actual assassination often occurred during vulnerable moments like public processions or private chambers, followed by a desperate and often chaotic escape through narrow streets or over city walls, with success heavily dependent on opportunity, surprise, and sheer physical endurance rather than planned logistical support. Historians still widely debate the precise use of coded messages and signaling systems among medieval conspirators, and whether any truly sophisticated methods existed beyond simple verbal cues or prearranged rendezvous points. Imagine yourself then, having received your grim assignment. Your target is a powerful bishop, rarely seen outside his heavily guarded cathedral or his opulent manor. Your first task is tracking. This is not a quick Google search or a check of social media. This is days, possibly weeks, of patient observation. You might spend hours huddled in a cold, damp alleyway, a truly pleasant experience. Let me tell you, watching the comings and goings from his residence. You note the changing of the guard, the routes of his servants, the times he attends mass, or takes his meals. You try to identify patterns, weaknesses. Every detail is crucial. A single inconsistency, a sudden change in routine, could mean your carefully laid plans are worthless. It truly sucked to wait endlessly in the cold. Your methods of tracking are primitive. You follow on foot, blending into crowds, trying not to draw attention. Remember the disguise dilemma from Chapter 3. You bribe stable boys, kitchen maids, or disgruntled guards for scraps of information. You listen to gossip in taverns, piecing together fragments of whispers. The information is always unreliable, colored by rumor, fear, or malice. You are a human data collector, your brain the only database, your memory the only storage. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the perilous pursuit, tracking, and escape is the curious phenomenon of assassins using trained carrier pigeons for post-kill communication. where, in some particularly desperate and high-stakes medieval assassinations across parts of Italy or the Middle East, a few highly organized groups would occasionally attempt to use specially trained carrier pigeons to relay a brief, coded message back to their patrons confirming the success of the mission. This was not a common or reliable method due to the fragility of the pigeons and the risks of interception, but a deeply personal, clandestine attempt at rapid communication, highlighting the profound isolation and lack of secure channels available to them, often with agonizing waits for confirmation or devastating news of failure. Imagine yourself releasing a tiny bird into the vast, indifferent sky, hoping it reaches its destination before you are caught. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the desperate measures they employed. It truly sucked to rely on a bird. The moment of truth arrives. You've identified your window, your opportunity. It might be during a public procession, a moment of vulnerability as your target moves through a crowded street, or a rare instance where they are alone in a private chamber. The strike itself is often chaotic and brutal. A desperate lunge, perhaps with one of those crude blades from Chapter 2, intended to be quick and decisive. Success is not guaranteed. Your target might be wearing hidden mail, or a guard might appear from nowhere. If the kill isn't instant, you're immediately in a fight for your life. This profound moment of chaos was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of public failure with modern performance reviews and professional coaching in a modern, brightly lit and scientifically informed corporate environment. Historians still widely debate the precise effectiveness of medieval security measures, such as personal bodyguards and castle fortifications, in deterring or preventing assassination attempts, and whether the perceived success rates of assassins were more often due to overwhelming numerical advantage or sheer luck. Then comes the escape. This is often the most perilous part. The alarm has been raised. Bells might be ringing, shouts echoing through the streets. You can't call for a getaway car or blend into an anonymous train station. You're on foot, weaving through narrow alleys, scrambling over rooftops, or plunging into the confusing labyrinth of the city's slums. Every turn might lead to a dead end. Every shadow might conceal an armed guard. You might have a prearranged rendezvous point, a safe house, or a hidden boat, but reaching it is a desperate race against time and overwhelming odds. The physical demands are immense. You're running, climbing, hiding, often for miles, with adrenaline coursing through your veins, your body aching, and every breath a struggle. The constant fear of capture, of being dragged to a dungeon and facing unimaginable torture, a delightful topic for a later chapter. I assure you, drives you onward. You are a hunted animal. Your survival dependent on your cunning and your raw physical endurance. As you consider the perilous pursuit, tracking and escape, you begin to understand that for those who walked the path of a medieval assassin, their lives were defined by a relentless cycle of tension, violence, and desperate flight. The endless waiting, the brutal strike, the agonizing escape, all were terrifying harbingers of doom, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The shadowed alleys and chaotic streets were not just thoroughfares. They were the terrifying stages for a deadly game of cat and mouse, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the perilous pursuit. Tracking and escape, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of desperate flight through unforgiving medieval landscapes. If Chapter 4 explored the physical and mental demands of their missions, tonight we'll delve into an even more insidious threat, one that often came from within their own ranks. No honor among thieves, betrayal and backstabbing. We're going to explore the stark, often horrifying, reality of pervasive distrust and treacherous alliances in the shadowy underworld of medieval assassins. Contemplating how individuals, already battling fear and superstition, face the chilling prospect of being sold out, framed, or directly murdered by those they once called allies. transforming every partnership into a potentially fatal trap, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on profound paranoia and desperate isolation, making every whispered confidence a testament to their profound distrust and every shared secret a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. Imagine yourself, now, a hardened figure in the murky depths of a secret society in 16th century Rome, Italy. Perhaps akin to a wary mob enforcer navigating the treacherous politics of a crime family in 1930s New York City, where loyalties shift like desert sands. You've mastered the grim techniques of your craft as you recall from chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. But now you face an enemy far more insidious than any target or pursuing guard, the smiling face of a supposed comrade. A silent handshake that conceals a poisoned dagger. There are no HR departments for conflict resolution, no internal affairs investigations, no reliable witness protection programs in a modern, ethically structured organization like, say, a multinational corporation in contemporary London. UK? Instead, every alliance is temporary, every shared secret a potential weapon against you, and every moment of trust an invitation for a fatal blow. The very air around you seems to hum with unspoken suspicions. Every friendly gesture a veiled threat, every quiet meeting a potential ambush. This is not the comforting camaraderie of a well-drilled military unit where lives are truly entwined. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with the very worst of human nature. Consider yourself a nervous figure, raising a goblet to toast a supposed ally, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as their eyes linger for a moment too long, knowing that the most dangerous weapon might be the one you never see coming, your body bracing for the inevitable, brutal reality of profound treachery, or perhaps a concerned informant, deep undercover with a drug cartel on the US-Mexico border, recognizing the detached efficiency with which betrayal is orchestrated and loyalty is punished, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those living on the fringes of constant danger and moral ambiguity. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of professional competition with modern legal contracts and ethical guidelines in a brightly lit modern office in, say, suburban Chicago, Illinois. The hushed whispers among your fellow conspirators, once a gentle murmur of shared purpose, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant footsteps, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of damp stone and profound distrust, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying betrayal, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on profound paranoia and desperate isolation. This is the pervasive, often terrifying, reality of no honor among thieves. Betrayal and backstabbing, where the very essence of medieval survival was not about profound personal relationships or mutual support, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to navigate a world defined by constant duplicity, transforming every alliance into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal security, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting success often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every whispered confidence a testament to their desperate fear and every shared secret a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. When you think of loyalty today, you might picture unbreakable bonds of friendship, unwavering family ties, or dedicated team players in a professional setting. But in the brutal, cutthroat world of medieval assassins and the criminal underworld they inhabited, honor was a concept as fluid and elusive as smoke. Trust was a luxury few could afford, and betrayal was an ever-present shadow, often more lethal than any enemy blade. Tonight, We delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin, and more, focusing on the chilling reality of no honor among thieves, betrayal, and backstabbing. A common historical truth is that medieval criminal and clandestine organizations, including those that might engage in assassinations, were highly unstable and prone to internal strife, characterized by fluid allegiances, constant power struggles, and a pervasive atmosphere of mistrust. Betrayal was a common occurrence, driven by fear of capture, desire for greater reward, or ambition, leading to frequent backstabbing, informants, and the violent elimination of perceived rivals or liabilities, making long-term stability and genuine camaraderie almost non-existent within such groups. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological impact of constant paranoia and distrust on the mental health of individuals operating within such volatile medieval clandestine groups, and whether the pervasive fear of betrayal contributed to shorter lifespans or higher rates of self-destruction. Imagine yourself, then, having successfully completed a dangerous mission for your patron. You return to your shadowy contacts, perhaps in a hidden tavern beneath the bustling streets of Paris, France, or a secluded safe house in the winding alleys of Florence, Italy. You expect your payment, perhaps a moment of respite. But in this world, relief is often followed by a sudden, chilling twist. Your allies are just as likely to turn on you as any enemy. Why? Perhaps your client decided you know too much. Maybe your skills have made you a rival to another assassin. Or perhaps the bounty on your head, offered by those you've wronged, is simply too tempting for someone you thought you could trust. This isn't the clear-cut, predictable betrayal of a villain in a modern spy movie, where the motive is usually obvious. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound realization that the greatest danger lies where you least expect it. It truly sucked to be betrayed by your own. The lack of any true legal framework or overarching authority meant that disputes within the criminal underworld were settled not by courts, but by violence. If you had a disagreement with a fellow assassin, if you owed a debt, or if you simply became an inconvenience, the solution was often a swift, brutal elimination. There was no appeal, no justice, only the cold logic of self-preservation, a fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about no honor among thieves. Betrayal and backstabbing is the curious phenomenon of poisoned chess pieces in clandestine meetings, where, in some particularly desperate and paranoid medieval criminal circles across parts of Eastern Europe or the Mediterranean, individuals engaged in high-stakes negotiations or power struggles would sometimes attempt to use specially crafted chess pieces or other common game tokens, which contained a small, hidden dose of slow-acting, odorless poison, designed to be subtly transferred to a rival during a game or casual interaction. This was not a common or reliable method, but a deeply personal, clandestine attempt at a silent, deniable kill, highlighting the pervasive fear of open confrontation and the desperate lengths to which individuals would go to eliminate threats from within, often with agonizing waits for the poison to take effect or devastating discovery. Imagine yourself making a careful move on the chessboard, your eyes subtly watching your opponent's hand for any unusual movement. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden dangers, even in moments of leisure. It truly sucked to play a game where the stakes were your life. Informants were a constant threat. A captured accomplice. Under torture, a delightful topic for a later chapter. I assure you, might give up your name. A rival. Seeking to gain favor or eliminate competition. Might sell you out to the city guard. The lure of a reward, or the promise of leniency, was often enough to break the fragile bonds of the underworld. You lived with the knowledge that anyone could be listening, anyone could be watching, and anyone could betray you at any moment. This profound lack of trust was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of online privacy breaches with modern encryption and digital security protocols in a modern, brightly lit and technologically advanced society. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of widespread medieval torture practices on the reliability of confessions and intelligence gathered from captured criminals or suspected assassins, and whether the fear of torture truly deterred crime or simply led to more elaborate forms of deception and internal purges within clandestine groups. The psychological toll of this constant threat of betrayal was immense. You couldn't truly relax, even among your supposed allies. Every shared drink, every confidential conversation, every joint venture was fraught with hidden peril. The lines between friend and foe blurred until they ceased to exist. You were utterly alone in a world of wolves, many of whom wore sheep's clothing. This perpetual state of hypervigilance, this inability to lower your guard, would slowly erode your sanity, turning you into a paranoid, isolated husk as you consider no honor among thieves. Betrayal and backstabbing, you begin to understand that for those who navigated the treacherous waters of the medieval underworld, the most dangerous enemies were often those closest to them. The whispered confidences, the fleeting alliances, the chilling acts of treachery, all were terrifying harbingers of doom, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The shadowy meeting places were not just points of contact, they were the terrifying stages for silent, deadly dramas, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of no honor among thieves. Betrayal and backstabbing, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of insidious treachery lurking within supposed alliances. If Chapter 5 explored the pervasive distrust among those in the shadows, tonight we'll delve into an equally potent, yet less tangible threat, the whispers of the streets, gossip and paranoia. We're going to explore the stark, often suffocating, reality of navigating a medieval society where information traveled by word of mouth, often distorted by fear and suspicion, contemplating how individuals already battling fear and superstition faced the chilling prospect of their identity being compromised by rumor, or their presence inciting collective terror, transforming every public space into a minefield of potential exposure, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the pursuit of ultimate anonymity often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on profound self-censorship and desperate isolation, making every hushed conversation a testament to their profound fear and every curious glance a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. Imagine yourself now, a silent figure walking through the bustling, narrow streets of 14th century Seville, Spain. Perhaps akin to a notorious figure trying to maintain anonymity in a small, gossipy town in rural New England during the early 20th century. You've somehow survived the brutal world of backstabbing and betrayal, a grim thought after Chapter 5. Mastered your deadly craft as you recall from Chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even managed to pull off a daring pursuit and escape from Chapter 4. Now, you sense something far more insidious in the air than a lurking enemy or a sharp blade, the subtle, unsettling shift in the atmosphere. The sudden silences when you approach, the quick, averted glances. The very air around you seems to hum with unspoken judgments. Every child's innocent pointing a potential signal. Every quiet huddle of townsfolk a whispered accusation. There are no encrypted messages, no secure digital networks for information control, no anonymous public transportation systems in a modern, technologically advanced society like, say, contemporary Tokyo, Japan. Instead, every rumor is amplified, every suspicion spreads like wildfire, and every unguarded interaction a potential fatal exposure. This is not the comforting background noise of a sprawling modern city where millions of faces blend into a blur. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with the collective consciousness of a fearful populace. Consider yourself a nervous figure pulling your cloak tighter, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you overhear your name, or a description matching yours. whispered in a market stall, knowing that an invisible net of suspicion is tightening around you, your body bracing for the inevitable. Brutal confrontation with public fear, or perhaps a concerned detective operating undercover in a tightly knit criminal organization in New Orleans. Louisiana, recognizing the detached efficiency with which fear and suspicion can turn neighbors into informants, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those living a double life in the shadow of constant societal judgment. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of online gossip with modern privacy settings and digital reputation management in a brightly lit modern apartment in, say, suburban Austin, Texas, the hushed whispers among the common folk, once a gentle murmur of daily life, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant bells, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of damp stone and profound unease, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying exposure, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate anonymity often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on constant self-censorship and profound paranoia. This is the pervasive, often terrifying, reality of the whispers of the streets. Gossip and paranoia, where the very essence of medieval survival was not about profound personal expression or social acceptance, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to disappear into an unforgiving crowd, transforming every public interaction into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for personal security, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting anonymity often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every innocent glance a testament to their desperate fear, and every simple question a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. When you think of information today, you consider global networks, instant news, and mass communication. But in the medieval period, news, rumors, and suspicions traveled primarily by word of mouth, a slow, organic, and often terrifyingly distorted process. For an assassin trying to remain hidden, this informal network of gossip and paranoia was often more dangerous than any city guard or vigilant noble. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more, focusing on the chilling reality of the whispers of the streets. Gossip and paranoia. A common historical truth is that in medieval urban and rural communities, gossip and rumor served as primary forms of communication and social control, often magnifying suspicions and accelerating the spread of paranoia, particularly regarding outsiders or individuals involved in clandestine activities, without centralized information systems. A single whispered accusation or suspicious observation could rapidly transform into widespread belief, leading to mob justice, vigilantism, or official inquiries, making it incredibly difficult for individuals involved in assassinations to escape detection and social condemnation, even without concrete evidence. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological impact of mass hysteria and collective paranoia on medieval community dynamics, and whether the fear of hidden threats genuinely served as a form of social cohesion or primarily fueled internal divisions and witch hunts. Imagine yourself then having just completed a daring act of assassination. The body has been discovered. Panic is spreading. You might have left no obvious clues, no fingerprints, no discarded weapon. But the medieval world didn't need forensic evidence. It had whispers. A servant might have seen a cloaked figure. A market vendor might recall a strange face. A child might remember a fleeting glance of an unusual emblem. These tiny fragments of observation, fueled by fear and imagination, would quickly coalesce into a collective narrative. Have you heard about the Lord's death? They say a dark figure was seen near the castle walls. I heard he wore a strange ring, perhaps a sign of his guild. This isn't the controlled dissemination of information through modern media, where news reports are often fact-checked ideally before release. This is raw, organic, and deeply disturbing. a profound struggle against an invisible, all-consuming tide of suspicion. It truly sucked to be the subject of rumor. The smaller, more tightly knit communities of the medieval era meant that strangers stood out. People knew their neighbors, their faces, their habits. An unfamiliar face, especially one that appeared around the time of a suspicious death, would immediately draw attention. Even if your disguise was perfect, a near impossibility. As you recall from Chapter 3, your mere presence might be enough to trigger suspicion. A fascinating yet rarely discussed detail about the whispers of the streets, gossip and paranoia, is the curious phenomenon of protective amulets against the evil eye of gossip. Where, in some particularly paranoid medieval communities across parts of Italy or the Balkan region, individuals, especially those with secrets or anxieties about their reputation, would sometimes wear small, inconspicuous amulets or charms, like a miniature horn or a tiny, stylized hand gesture believed to ward off the evil eye of gossip and malicious rumor. Not as a genuine magical shield, but as a deeply personal and clandestine act of desperate superstition and a silent, unspoken acknowledgement of their profound vulnerability to public opinion and unseen malevolence. Imagine yourself subtly adjusting a small, dark charm beneath your tunic, hoping it might deflect the invisible arrows of suspicion, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden anxieties they carried. It truly sucked to rely on a trinket. The problem with gossip was its rapid, uncontrollable spread and its tendency to escalate. A factual observation could quickly become exaggerated, embellished with fantastical details. The dark figure could become a demonic assassin. The strange ring could become a cursed artifact. Fear fed on itself, turning innocent people into suspicious accusers, and ordinary events into supernatural omens. Once a rumor took root, it was almost impossible to dislodge. You couldn't issue a public statement, hire a PR firm, or file a libel lawsuit. Your reputation, and thus your life, could be destroyed by a single, unchecked whisper. This profound vulnerability to public opinion was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of online harassment with modern legal protections and digital privacy settings in a modern, brightly lit and technologically advanced society. Historians still widely debate the precise role of medieval church sermons and religious teachings in both fostering and attempting to control the spread of malicious gossip and rumors, and whether the condemnation of slander was more effective in preventing it or simply drove it underground into more secretive forms. The pervasive paranoia also extended beyond your immediate circles. If a prominent figure was assassinated, the entire city or region might be gripped by fear. Guards would become more vigilant, citizens more suspicious. Curfews might be imposed, and strangers closely questioned. Every shadow, every unusual sound, every unfamiliar face became a source of terror. You, the assassin, contributed to this atmosphere of dread, and then had to navigate it, knowing that your own actions fueled the very paranoia that threatened to expose you. Living under such scrutiny, even if you weren't directly suspected, meant a constant state of hypervigilance. You had to monitor every conversation, every glance, every subtle shift in the mood of the crowd. The psychological toll of this relentless self-censorship and fear of exposure would have been immense, slowly eroding your mental well-being. The streets, once roots for your deadly work, became a suffocating prison of whispers. As you consider the whispers of the streets, gossip and paranoia, you begin to understand that for those who walk the path of a medieval assassin, their lives were defined not just by physical threats, but by the insidious, intangible danger of collective fear and suspicion, the hushed conversations, the averted glances, the rapid spread of rumor. All were terrifying harbingers of doom, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The crowded marketplaces were not just centers of commerce. They were the terrifying stages for a silent, psychological warfare, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, menace. let's gently return from the grim reality of the whispers of the streets. Gossip and paranoia, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of insidious rumors spreading like wildfire. If Chapter 6 explored the psychological torment of public scrutiny, tonight we'll delve into the most terrifying consequence of failure, the wrath of the law, torture and execution. We're going to explore the stark, often agonizing, reality of medieval justice, contemplating how individuals, already battling fear and superstition, face the chilling prospect of capture, brutal interrogation, and public, agonizing death, transforming even the smallest mistake into a doorway to unimaginable suffering, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the pursuit of basic survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on desperate flight and profound stoicism, making every creaking rack a testament to their profound terror, and every public square a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. Imagine yourself, now, a captured figure, bound and dragged through the jeering crowds of 13th century Paris, France, perhaps akin to a notorious gangster apprehended by federal agents in the unforgiving, lawless streets of 1920s Chicago, Illinois. You've navigated the treacherous world of whispers and paranoia, a grim thought after Chapter 6. Survived the betrayals of supposed allies from Chapter 5. Mastered your deadly craft as you recall from Chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And even managed to pull off a daring pursuit and escape from Chapter 4. But now your luck has run out. The cold iron of manacles bites into your wrists, and the shouts of the angry mob are deafening. There are no Miranda rights, no public defenders, no presumption of innocence, no merciful lethal injections in a modern, ethically structured legal system like, say, contemporary Oslo, Norway. Instead, you face accusations, brutal interrogation designed to extract confession, and a swift, public, and often agonizing death. The very air around you seems to hum with vengeful fury, every guard's hand a source of pain, every question a trap. This is not the clean, sterile environment of a modern courtroom where due process is upheld. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with the terrifying apparatus of medieval power. Consider yourself a terrified figure, strapped to a wooden bench, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as the torturer's implements are laid out before you. Knowing that your body is about to become an instrument of your own undoing, your mind bracing for the inevitable. Agonizing screams, or perhaps a concerned operative, captured by a hostile regime during the Cold War, recognizing the detached efficiency with which information is extracted, and resistance is broken, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those living under the shadow of state-sanctioned violence and profound injustice. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of legal disputes with modern arbitration and civil lawsuits in a brightly lit modern office in, say, suburban Denver, Colorado. The hushed whispers among the executioners, once a simple murmur of professional duties, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant bells, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of damp stone and profound dread, and the unspoken certainty of inevitable, horrifying pain, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate truth often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on profound brutality and desperate confession. This is the pervasive, often terrifying reality of the wrath of the law, torture, and execution, where the very essence of medieval justice was not about profound rehabilitation or equitable due process, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to extract confession and mete out swift, terrifying punishment, transforming every capture into a terrifying, ill-fated struggle for physical and mental integrity, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting freedom often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths. making every strained muscle a testament to their desperate fear, and every public display a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. When you think of justice today, you envision courtrooms, judges, lawyers, and a system built on evidence and due process. But in the medieval period, particularly for someone accused of a grave crime like assassination, justice was often a brutal, swift, and terrifying spectacle designed not for fairness, but for deterrence and confession. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more, focusing on the chilling reality of the wrath of the law, torture, and execution. A common historical truth is that medieval judicial systems, particularly for serious crimes like regicide or assassination, frequently employed torture as a standard means to extract confessions and identify accomplices. With common methods including the rack, thumbscrews, and water torture, public executions, often involving gruesome practices like hanging, drawing, and quartering or burning at the stake, served as powerful deterrents and spectacles of state power, ensuring that anyone caught engaging in assassination faced not only death but also prolonged, agonizing suffering designed to break their will and deliver a public lesson. Historians still widely debate the precise psychological effectiveness of medieval torture in extracting reliable information, and whether the fear of such brutal methods truly deterred potential criminals or simply led to false confessions and further cycles of violence. Imagine yourself. Then, having been captured after a failed mission, or perhaps betrayed by one of your supposed allies, remember no honor among thieves from Chapter 5? Your freedom, your anonymity, a futile effort, as you recall from Chapter 3, and your very life are now forfeit. You are dragged, perhaps through a jeering crowd fueled by the whispers of the streets from Chapter 6, to a dark, damp dungeon. This isn't the sterile, brightly lit interrogation room of a modern police station in, say, suburban San Jose, California. This is raw, terrifying, and deeply disturbing. A profound descent into institutionalized brutality. It truly sucked to be caught. Your captors aren't interested in your rights. They are interested in a confession, and perhaps the names of your accomplices or patrons. And they will use any means necessary to get it. This is where torture comes in. The medieval mind saw torture not just as punishment, but as a legitimate method of obtaining truth, under the twisted belief that pain would force the guilty to confess. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about the wrath of the law. Torture and execution is the curious phenomenon of pre-execution confession rituals, where, in some particularly brutal medieval judicial systems across parts of France or Germany, condemned prisoners, especially those accused of heinous crimes like assassination, would sometimes be subjected to a final, public confession ritual before their execution. This involved being paraded through the streets, often with a placard detailing their crimes, while a priest or magistrate publicly exhorted them to confess their sins and repent. Not as a genuine act of compassion, but as a deeply personal and clandestine attempt to legitimize the state's power and ensure public condemnation, and a silent, unspoken acknowledgement of the profound spiritual fear they tried to instill. Imagine yourself stripped of dignity, forced to parrot words of repentance before a jeering crowd, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden humiliations they endured. It truly sucked to confess publicly. Common torture methods were designed to inflict maximum pain without immediate death, prolonging the suffering. The rack would stretch your limbs, dislocating joints, slowly tearing you apart. Thumbscrews would crush your digits, exquisitely painful. Water torture involved forcing vast amounts of water down your throat until your stomach distended agonizingly. There were branding irons, heated pincers, and a myriad of other horrific devices, each designed to break your will and force a confession. You would promise anything, invent anything, just to make the pain stop. This profound physical and mental torment was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of legal penalties with modern legal counsel and plea bargains in a modern, brightly lit and scientifically informed justice system. Historians still widely debate the precise theological justifications used by medieval church authorities to reconcile the use of torture in judicial proceedings with Christian principles, and whether these justifications reflected genuine theological consensus or pragmatic adaptations to existing secular legal practices. If you survived the interrogation, your fate was sealed execution. And these were not quick, private affairs. Medieval executions were public spectacles, designed to be a grim lesson to the populace. You would be paraded through the streets, perhaps to the town square or gallows hill, surrounded by a morbidly curious crowd. The methods of execution were varied and often gruesome, intended to inflict a final, agonizing display of suffering. Hanging was common, but often not a quick drop. Sometimes it was a slow strangulation, prolonging the death. For particularly heinous crimes, or those seen as threats to the social order, you might face hanging, drawing, and quartering, a horrific process involving evisceration before being dismembered. Your body parts displayed as a warning. Burning at the stake was reserved for heretics. Witches remember those witches' brews from chapter 6, or those accused of sorcery? A terrifyingly painful end. Beheading, while swift, was usually reserved for nobility or those of high status. For an assassin, a painful public death was almost a certainty. The psychological terror of anticipating such a fate, of knowing that every nerve in your body would soon be screaming in agony before your life was snuffed out in front of a baying crowd, would have been a torment almost as great as the physical pain itself. There was no dignity, no mercy, only profound humiliation and excruciating suffering. As you consider the wrath of the law, torture, and execution, you begin to understand that for those who walked the path of a medieval assassin, failure was not just death. It was an unimaginable descent into profound, prolonged suffering designed to break body and spirit. The creaking rack, the burning iron, the jeering crowds all were terrifying harbingers of doom, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The dungeon and the gallows were not just places of punishment, they were the terrifying stages for a final agonizing performance, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the wrath of the law, torture and execution, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of agonizing interrogations and public brutal deaths. If Chapter 7 explored the external consequences of capture, tonight we'll delve into an equally devastating, yet often unspoken internal burden. A solitary existence, loneliness, and distrust. We're going to explore the stark, often soul-crushing, reality of profound isolation for medieval assassins, contemplating how individuals, already battling fear and superstition, face the chilling prospect of a life devoid of genuine connection, where every relationship was tainted by suspicion, and every moment of vulnerability became a profound risk, transforming a human need into a dangerous weakness, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these shadowed times, the pursuit of ultimate secrecy often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on self-imposed exile and profound emotional desolation, making every unspoken thought a testament to their profound loneliness, and every averted gaze a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. Imagine yourself now, a silent figure in a desolate hovel on the outskirts of 15th century Frankfurt, Germany, perhaps akin to a disillusioned spy living in the shadows of Cold War Berlin, isolated and constantly looking over their shoulder. You've somehow evaded the torturer's rack and the executioner's axe, a narrow escape. As you recall from Chapter 7, survived the public scrutiny and paranoia from Chapter 6, navigated the brutal world of backstabbing and betrayal from Chapter 5. mastered your deadly craft as you recall from chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4, and even managed to pull off daring pursuits and escapes from chapter 4. But now, the silence is deafening. The greatest threat is not a blade or a poison, but the profound, aching emptiness within. There are no friendly faces, no trusted confidants, no shared laughter, no safe havens to truly lower your guard in a modern, interconnected society like, say, contemporary Los Angeles, California, where social networks and therapy are readily available. Instead, every interaction is a calculation, every potential friendship a dangerous vulnerability, and every moment of connection a profound risk. The very air around you seems to hum with unspoken judgments, every kind gesture a veiled trap, every quiet moment a reminder of your utter isolation. This is not the comforting solitude of a peaceful retreat where introspection is welcomed. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing, a profound engagement with the terrifying reality of human disconnection. Consider yourself a nervous figure, gazing out at the flickering light of distant homes, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as you imagine the warmth and camaraderie denied to you, knowing that your life depends on maintaining an impenetrable emotional barrier, your body bracing for the inevitable, brutal reality of profound loneliness. Or perhaps a concerned operative, living in a safe house after a botched mission, recognizing the detached efficiency with which isolation erodes the spirit, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those living a life of constant deception and profound distrust, far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of social anxiety with modern therapeutic interventions and online support groups in a brightly lit, modern apartment in, say, suburban Phoenix, Arizona, the hushed whispers of your own thoughts, once a gentle murmur of daily reflection, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant wind, the pervasive, almost palpable ascent of stale air and profound desperation, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying despair, thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate secrecy often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on self-imposed exile and profound emotional desolation. This is the pervasive, often terrifying, reality of a solitary existence, loneliness, and distrust, where the very essence of medieval survival was not about profound emotional fulfillment or social bonding, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to protect oneself from an unforgiving world, transforming every human need into a terrifying, ill-fated gamble for survival, and revealing a chilling truth that, in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting safety often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every unspoken thought a testament to their desperate fear and every averted gaze a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. When you think of human connection today, you imagine friends, family, loved ones, and the comfort of shared experiences. But for a medieval assassin or anyone living a life deep in the shadows, genuine human connection was a dangerous luxury, almost impossible to maintain. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more, focusing on the chilling reality of a solitary existence, loneliness, and distrust. A common historical truth is that individuals engaged in clandestine or criminal activities in medieval society typically led isolated lives, characterized by profound loneliness and pervasive distrust, as genuine relationships posed significant risks of exposure, betrayal, or emotional vulnerability. The constant need for secrecy and the threat of capture or vengeance necessitated the severance of family ties, the avoidance of lasting friendships, and the cultivation of an impenetrable emotional barrier, leading to psychological distress and a profound sense of alienation from mainstream society. Historians still widely debate the precise long-term psychological effects of extreme social isolation on medieval individuals involved in secretive professions, and whether the documented cases of madness or despair were more often due to pre-existing conditions or the direct consequence of their solitary existence. Imagine yourself, then living a life where your true identity is a closely guarded secret, your past a collection of lies, and your future an unpredictable path of danger? You might occasionally have allies or contacts within the underworld. Remember the constant threat of betrayal from Chapter 5. But these relationships are transactional, built on mutual need, not genuine affection or trust. You are always on your guard. You share no true confidences, reveal no genuine weaknesses. Every interaction is a performance, every word carefully chosen. This isn't the temporary isolation of a modern business traveler or a student studying abroad, where human connection is readily available through technology. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with the absence of genuine human warmth. It truly sucked to be so alone. Family was often a distant memory, or a dangerous liability. To protect them, or to avoid them being used against you, a common tactic of medieval authorities. As you recall from Chapter 7, you would likely have severed all ties. Holidays, celebrations, the simple comfort of a shared meal with loved ones. These were luxuries you could no longer afford. Your home was wherever you could find temporary shelter. A place to sleep with one eye open. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed detail about a solitary existence. Loneliness and distrust is the curious phenomenon of assassins keeping a single coded personal journal, where, in some particularly reflective and isolated medieval assassins, a very small number might have attempted to keep a highly cryptic and coded personal journal, not for operational notes, but as a deeply personal, clandestine attempt to process their thoughts and feelings in secret, and a silent, unspoken acknowledgement of their profound loneliness and the absolute inability to confide in another human being, often filled with philosophical musings or melancholic observations rather than details of their grim work. Imagine yourself, by flickering candlelight, painstakingly writing in a secret script, pouring your heart onto parchment that no one else would ever truly read. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried. It truly sucked to talk only to yourself. Friendship, in its true sense, was equally perilous. A friend might inadvertently reveal a secret. A friend might be captured and forced to betray you under torture. A friend might simply become too curious, asking questions you couldn't answer. The risk outweighed the reward. So, you kept people at arm's length, maintaining a polite, distant facade, or cultivating a reputation as a solitary, unapproachable figure. This profound emotional self-censorship was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of social judgment with modern social boundaries and professional networking strategies in a modern, brightly lit and technologically advanced society. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of extreme emotional isolation on the spiritual beliefs of medieval individuals in clandestine professions, and whether their detachment from conventional society led to a greater reliance on fatalism, nihilism, or alternative forms of spiritual solace. The world you inhabited was one where suspicion was the default. Every new face was a potential threat. Every friendly gesture a possible trap. You questioned motives, analyzed glances, and searched for hidden meanings in every word. This hypervigilance, while essential for survival, would slowly erode your ability to trust, even when trust was genuinely offered. You became a prisoner of your own paranoia, seeing enemies everywhere, even in the kindness of strangers. The psychological toll of this constant isolation and distrust would have been immense. Depression, anxiety, and a profound sense of meaninglessness would be constant companions. The silence, broken only by your own thoughts, would amplify your fears and regrets. You would long for a simple conversation, a comforting touch, a moment of genuine connection, but know that these desires were dangerous weaknesses you could not afford. Your soul withered in the absence of human warmth, leaving you an empty vessel. As you consider a solitary existence, loneliness and distrust, yet you begin to understand that for those who walked the path of a medieval assassin, Their lives were defined not just by physical danger, but by a profound, agonizing internal void. The lack of genuine connection, the pervasive suspicion, the crushing weight of isolation, all were terrifying harbingers of doom. A chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. The quiet rooms and lonely roads were not just spaces they occupied, they were the terrifying stages for a silent, desperate struggle against an unseen, yet deeply felt menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of a solitary existence, loneliness, and distrust. Where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of a life devoid of genuine human connection. If Chapter 8 explored the soul-crushing burden of isolation, tonight we'll delve into an equally heavy, yet often unacknowledged, consequence of their dark profession. The price of blood, conscience, and consequences. We're going to explore the stark, often agonizing, reality of the psychological and spiritual toll exacted upon medieval assassins. Contemplating how individuals, already battling fear and superstition, face the chilling prospect of enduring profound guilt, haunting memories, and an inescapable sense of moral corruption, transforming every kill into a burden on their very soul, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on moral compromise and profound despair, making every sleepless night a testament to their profound torment, and every flickering shadow a silent, disturbing promise of deeper but more profound peril. Imagine yourself now, a silent figure lying awake on a straw pallet in a squalid room in 16th century London, England. Perhaps akin to a shell-shocked veteran of a covert operation in the jungles of Vietnam in the 1970s, haunted by the choices made and the lives taken. You've somehow survived the brutal world of isolation and distrust, a grim thought after Chapter 8. Evaded the torturer's rack and the executioner's axe from Chapter 7. Navigated the public scrutiny and paranoia from Chapter 6. Survived the betrayals of supposed allies from Chapter 5. Mastered your deadly craft as you recall from Chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And even managed to pull off daring pursuits and escapes from Chapter 4. But now, the external dangers have receded, replaced by an enemy within your own mind. There are no therapists, no support groups, no pharmaceutical solutions for psychological trauma in a modern, compassionate society like, say, contemporary Vancouver, Canada. Instead, you face the relentless replay of your past deeds, the chilling whispers of your victims, and an inescapable sense of damnation. The very air around you seems to hum with unspoken judgments. Every creaking floorboard a reminder of a past violence. Every quiet moment a profound confrontation with your own moral decay. This is not the comforting process of psychological healing where trauma is processed and overcome. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with the terrifying reality of a fractured soul. Consider yourself a nervous figure, staring into the flickering embers of a dying fire, feeling a prickle of cold sweat as the faces of your victims flash before your eyes, knowing that the deepest wounds are those you inflict upon yourself, your mind bracing for the inevitable, brutal reality of profound regret, or perhaps a concerned individual, grappling with profound moral compromises made during a desperate struggle for survival in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Recognizing the detached efficiency with which desperation can erode one's humanity, forcing you to acknowledge the profound, unacknowledged savagery that was a daily reality for those forced to commit unspeakable acts for the sake of mere existence. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of ethical dilemmas with modern philosophical debate and moral frameworks in a brightly lit modern university in, say, suburban Boston, Massachusetts, the hushed whispers of your own conscience. Once a gentle murmur of moral guidance, now mingle with the chilling sounds of distant wind, the pervasive, almost palpable scent of damp earth and profound desperation, and the unspoken dread of inevitable, horrifying despair. thick with the pervasive anxiety of a mind grappling with a hidden world where the pursuit of ultimate survival often meant embracing a chilling, almost dehumanizing, reliance on moral compromise and profound despair. This is the pervasive, often terrifying, reality of the price of blood, conscience, and consequences, where the very essence of medieval suffering was not about profound emotional fulfillment or intellectual enlightenment, but about raw, desperate, and often heartbreaking attempts to cope with the indelible stain of violence, transforming every memory into a terrifying, ill-fated struggle for internal peace, and revealing a chilling truth that in these shadowed times, the promise of fleeting success often led down dark, morally ambiguous paths, making every sleepless night a testament to their profound torment, and every flickering shadow a silent, disturbing promise of deeper, more profound peril. When you think of the aftermath of violence today, you consider the legal consequences, the physical wounds, and perhaps the psychological trauma that can be addressed through therapy. But for a medieval assassin, the price of blood was far more profound, touching not just their body or their freedom, but their very soul. In a deeply religious and superstitious age, the moral and spiritual consequences of taking a life, especially outside of just war or self-defense, were terrifyingly real. Tonight, we delve into the visceral truth of why it sucked to be a medieval assassin and more, focusing on the chilling reality of the price of blood, conscience, and consequences. A common historical truth is that medieval individuals, particularly in a deeply religious Christian society, faced immense spiritual and psychological burdens when engaging in acts of murder, including assassination, the pervasive belief in divine judgment, eternal damnation, and the concept of an indelible stain on the soul meant that assassins often grappled with profound guilt, haunting memories, and a desperate search for absolution, leading to psychological distress, nightmares, and a chilling sense of moral corruption that often far outlasted the physical dangers of their profession. Historians still widely debate the precise efficacy of medieval religious penance and absolution rituals in alleviating the psychological distress and guilt experienced by individuals who committed acts of violence, and whether such practices truly provided spiritual comfort or merely a temporary reprieve from torment. Imagine yourself, then, having carried out countless acts of violence, your hands stained with the blood of others. You might have escaped capture, avoided betrayal, and remained anonymous, a constant struggle, as you recall from chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6. But the true prison is now within your own mind. The faces of your victims, the sound of their last breaths, the grim details of your actions. These are etched into your memory, replaying themselves in endless, torturous loops. This isn't the temporary stress of a difficult job in a modern, ethically clear workplace in, say, suburban Dallas, Texas. This is raw, personal, and deeply disturbing. A profound engagement with the terrifying reality of a guilty conscience. It truly sucked to be haunted by your past. In medieval society, the concept of sin was omnipresent. Murder, particularly premeditated murder for personal gain or political power, was a mortal sin, a direct affront to God. The fear of eternal damnation was not an abstract concept. It was a terrifyingly real prospect. A vivid hellfire preached from every pulpit. Every kill you made deepened the stain on your soul, pushing you closer to an eternity of torment. This profound spiritual dread was often far more paralyzing than any earthly threat. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about the price of blood, conscience, and consequences is the curious phenomenon of assassins seeking secret monastic confession, where, in some particularly tormented medieval assassins across parts of France or Germany, individuals burdened by overwhelming guilt would sometimes seek out remote, isolated monasteries or hermitages, attempting to make a secret, anonymous confession to a particularly lenient or empathetic monk. This was not a common or reliable path to absolution, but a deeply personal, clandestine attempt to alleviate profound spiritual distress, highlighting the desperate lengths to which individuals would go to seek forgiveness in a world where their actions were considered unforgivable, often with varying degrees of psychological or spiritual relief. Imagine yourself kneeling in a dark confessional, whispering unspeakable deeds to an unseen priest, hoping for a shred of peace, a deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden burdens they carried. It truly sucked to confess your sins in secret. The consequences extended beyond the spiritual. Many assassins would suffer from nightmares, vivid, terrifying replays of their violent acts. Sleep, meant to be a refuge, became another arena of torment. They might experience hallucinations, seeing the faces of their victims in the shadows, or hearing their dying pleas in the wind. The constant hypervigilance required for their survival from Chapter 4 could morph into paranoia and anxiety, further exacerbated by the psychological weight of their crimes. This profound mental anguish was far more immediate and less personally secure than simply managing abstract fears of professional burnout with modern mental health resources and work-life balance strategies in a modern, brightly lit and technologically advanced society. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of medieval medical theories, such as the humoral theory, on the understanding and treatment of psychological distress like guilt or trauma, and whether the prevailing spiritual explanations for such conditions hindered the development of more effective therapeutic approaches. The assassin's isolation, remember, a solitary existence from Chapter 8, compounded this suffering. There was no one to confide in, no one to share the burden with. The secrets they carried were not just about their missions, but about the profound moral decay within. This internal prison was inescapable and following them wherever they went, a constant reminder of the choices they had made. Some might attempt to find solace in drink, losing themselves in the bottom of a tavern mug. Others might seek out fleeting, meaningless relationships, trying to fill the void within. But these were temporary palliatives, offering no true escape from the gnawing guilt. The price of blood was a debt that could never truly be paid, a wound that never truly healed. It lingered, a dark shadow over their entire existence, until their eventual, often violent, end. As you consider the price of blood, conscience, and consequences, you begin to understand that for those who walk the path of a medieval assassin, the greatest battle was often fought not with blades or poisons, but within the tormented confines of their own minds. The sleepless nights, the haunting memories, the profound sense of moral corruption, all were terrifying harbingers of doom, a chilling testament to the pervasive dread that truly sucked the peace from their lives. Their very thoughts became a perpetual torture chamber, a constant reminder of the unseen threats that haunted their every waking moment, forcing them into a desperate, silent battle against an unseen, yet deeply felt, menace. Let's gently return from the grim reality of the price of blood, conscience, and consequences, where you, a modern person, grimaced at the thought of a soul crushed by guilt and haunting memories. If Chapter 9 explored the internal torment of their dark profession, tonight we'll bring our grim journey through the harrowing existence of medieval assassins to a reflective close. We'll connect the profound suffering and terrifying realities of their past lives to a modern appreciation for the astonishing comfort, safety, and ethical clarity we now possess. We're going to explore the stark, often humbling, reality of Echoes of the Blade fading secrets, modern ethics, contemplating how the extreme efforts and profound despair endured by those in the shadows underscore the immense value of the peace and justice we often take for granted, transforming their tragic struggles into a poignant reminder that even the darkest chapters of human history can eventually yield to the quiet triumph of societal evolution, and revealing a chilling truth that the ultimate lesson from the brutal world of medieval assassins might just be the universal human need for dignity, for justice, and for the profound, unshakable right to live a life unburdened by preventable terror, making every moment of modern security a testament to our collective progress, and every peaceful night's sleep a silent triumph over the archaic. terrifying shadows of the past, imagine yourself, now, a modern individual, perhaps sitting in a comfortable armchair, the soft glow of a reading lamp illuminating your living room in, say, suburban Portland, Oregon. You are safe, secure, and preparing for the deep, restorative sleep that eluded so many of those desperate men and women who lived and died by the blade. This is not the exhausted collapse of someone who has just barely escaped a public execution, nor the constant psychological torment of a guilty conscience. This is profound peace, a luxury purchased by centuries of ethical striving, legal reform, and the slow, arduous process of building societies founded on justice and human rights, a luxury denied to countless individuals for generations. Consider yourself a contemplative individual, reflecting on the vast chasm between the agonizing, perilous experience of a medieval assassin and the almost effortless comfort you now experience during a routine evening at home. Recognizing that their suffering inadvertently paved the way for the very tranquility and security you now possess. Illustrating the profound historical journey from brutal primitivism to genuine, compassionate understanding of justice. Or perhaps a dreaming mind, wandering through the vast landscapes of human history, understanding that the ancient, obsessive pursuit of basic safety and knowledge, however misguided its early methods, was a necessary, if terrifying, step on humanity's long path toward genuine understanding of both human nature and societal governance, which now allows for the quiet contemplation and secure rest that were once impossible. Far more immediate and less personally secure than simply analyzing a historical timeline of legal reforms in a quiet, abstract academic setting in, say, a pristine university library in Washington, D.C. The gentle whispers of your own breath, once a simple biological function, now seem imbued with a subtle, profound resonance of historical struggle and enduring human ingenuity, thick with the silent echoes of those whose lives were defined by constant external and internal battles against an incomprehensible, often merciless world. This is the pervasive, often profoundly humbling reality of echoes of the blade fading secrets, modern ethics, where the extreme fear and brutal realities of ancient assassins provide a powerful backdrop for appreciating the quiet, often unacknowledged comforts of modern life, transforming every peaceful moment into a silent celebration of human progress and revealing a chilling truth that the ultimate symbols of modern comfort and personal well-being are often directly tied to the unacknowledged, agonizing struggle to escape the very chaos and terror that defined ancient, violent belief systems. We've journeyed through the disturbing world of medieval assassins and their miserable fates, from the grim reality of shadows calling. Chapter 1 and the crude terrors of primitive poisons and blades. Chapter 2, through the perilous challenges of hiding in plain sight. Chapter 3 and the relentless demands of tracking and escape. Chapter 4, we felt the chilling dread of betrayal and backstabbing. Chapter 5, the insidious threat of gossip and paranoia. Chapter 6, the terrifying specter of torture and execution. Chapter 7, and the soul-crushing burden of loneliness and distrust. Chapter 8, culminating in the profound internal torment of conscience and consequences. Chapter 9, we've seen the sheer scale of their suffering, a testament to a time when basic human rights were non-existent, and every aspect of life was fraught with arbitrary danger. Now, as our long journey concludes, let's take a moment to reflect on these extreme realities and what their brutal, desperate existence can tell us about ourselves, about the nature of human progress, and about the profound importance of the very things we seek tonight: peace and rest. This final chapter, Echoes of the Blade Fading Secrets, Modern Ethics, brings us full circle from the ultimate expression of human brutality to the fundamental human need for comfort and recuperation. A common historical truth is that the gradual development of more centralized governance, formalized legal systems, and robust public security forces, combined with evolving ethical frameworks, significantly diminished the prevalence and necessity of assassination as a political or personal tool throughout and after the medieval period. The concept of due process, the condemnation of torture, and the establishment of clearer judicial standards transformed societies from reliance on brutal, clandestine violence to more orderly and predictable means of conflict resolution, leading to a profound shift in human interaction with and perception of justice. Historians still widely debate the precise impact of Enlightenment-era philosophical thought on the decline of state-sanctioned torture and the rise of more humane judicial practices, and whether economic factors or the emergence of new forms of warfare played a more significant role in reducing the historical frequency of political assassinations. Imagine yourself, then, living in a world where your disputes are settled in a courtroom, not a dark alley, where your personal safety is largely guaranteed by law enforcement, not by your own ability to wield a blade or outwit a betrayer. When you wake up each morning, you don't brace for agony or monstrous encounters. You simply enjoy the relative stability of a structured society. You're greeted by transparent legal systems, perhaps participate in democratic processes, and are largely confident in your safety and the predictability of justice. The air smells of freshly brewed coffee and clean city streets, not blood and fear. The sounds are the gentle hum of modern life, not the whispered threats of a vengeful rival. This boundless comfort, this inherent sense of safety and understanding of the rules that govern society, is something we often take for granted. But for those in the medieval period, particularly those involved in the grim profession of assassination, these were unimaginable luxuries. They lived lives where almost every aspect of interacting with the world was dictated by fear, violence, gas, and the constant threat of the unknown. A perpetual state of being acted upon rather than acting. Their lives were constrained by the perceived dangers of the human underworld, their minds haunted by terrifying stories, and their futures were dictated by the terrifying limitations of primitive understanding and brutal power dynamics. It truly sucked to live in such a world. The experiences of those in the medieval shadows, and their extreme fear and vulnerability, force us to confront the very definition of a life free from preventable suffering and terrifying oppression. They were often strong, resilient individuals, admired for their brutal effectiveness. Yet, as we've seen throughout our journey, these external markers of fortitude often masked profound internal suffering. The very things that make a conflict bearable: justice, accountability, and a sense of due process were systematically denied to them. Their desperate attempts to evade capture, as explored with tracking and escape in Chapter 4, their reliance on primitive charms, remember the crude poisons and blades from Chapter 2, their vulnerability to the unpredictable as seen with betrayal and backstabbing in Chapter 5, all became constant, mocking reminders of the emptiness within their limited understanding of the world. A fascinating, yet rarely discussed, detail about echoes of the blade fading secrets. Modern ethics is the curious phenomenon of historical true crime tourism in former medieval prisons, where even today in certain ancient cities across Europe like London or Nuremberg, a small informal subculture of tourists specifically seeks out and tours former medieval prisons, torture chambers, or execution sites, not out of morbid curiosity alone, but as a deeply personal, clandestine attempt to physically connect with the grim realities of historical justice and a silent, unspoken acknowledgement of the enduring power of these brutal narratives, even if no longer literally feared. Imagine yourself standing in a chilling, dank dungeon, feeling a shiver down your spine despite your modern safety. A deeply personal and often overlooked detail of the hidden echoes of historical fear. It truly sucked to be on the wrong side of those walls. The journey from the brutal world of the medieval assassin to the relatively safe and ethically guided societies of today is a testament to humanity's enduring drive to alleviate suffering and advance justice. It highlights that true progress is not just measured in grand inventions, but in the painstaking legal reforms, ethical developments, and humanitarian advancements that allow us to live with greater comfort, safety, and dignity. Their struggle, their quiet despair, serves as a powerful historical mirror, reflecting back to us the immense value of the liberties and comforts we now enjoy. Their lives, lived under constant threat of arbitrary violence and pervasive injustice, underscore the importance of legal protections, human rights, and a compassionate approach to societal governance. Their chaotic and dangerous environments, filled with the constant threat of terrifying capture. Remember the wrath of the law in Chapter 7, and the insidious fear of internal decay like conscience and consequences in Chapter 9. Stand in stark contrast to the emphasis on health, safety, and well-being in modern societies. The very fact that we can now calmly and safely explore their history, knowing we are not subject to such arbitrary dangers or pervasive ethical compromises, is a testament to how far humanity has progressed in understanding and valuing the individual. Historians and cultural anthropologists still widely debate the long-term societal impact of ingrained historical violence and injustice on contemporary human psychology, and whether the echoes of such deeply ingrained experiences still subtly influence modern anxieties about power, authority, or even the perception of evil in societies that emerged from similar historical contexts. The people who chose, or were forced, into the life of a medieval assassin were trapped in a system that promised fleeting, brutal relief from their fears, but often delivered profound, prolonged suffering. Their existence was a perpetual battle for comfort and understanding, ultimately ending in their bodies marked by hardship. Their lives often diminished by chronic fear and internal torment. They were living, breathing examples of how a lack of established justice, coupled with a rudimentary worldview, could utterly dehumanize. So, as we finally conclude our journey into the disturbing world of medieval assassins and their miserable fates, their lives, their challenges, their quiet suffering, let their extreme experiences serve as a poignant backdrop against which to truly appreciate your own moment of peace. The comfort of your bed, the silence of the night, the profound simplicity of closing your eyes and drifting into sleep. These are not small things. They are the hard-won victories of human progress, the culmination of centuries of ethical inquiry, legal development, and a slow, painful shedding of primal fears. A journey in which even the most brutal historical realities inadvertently reveal the universal human longing for comfort and a life free from agonizing terror. Every breath you take tonight, every moment of stillness, is a profound farewell to the constant vigilance, the aching body, the scarred spirit, and the restless, fractured mind of those who walked the shadows of medieval violence. Their legacy isn't just in the historical records they left behind, it's in the quiet appreciation we gain for the calm and freedom that they so rarely knew. Their relentless endurance, however tragic, laid some of the earliest stones on the path that eventually led to a world where individuals can truly define their own worth, pursue their own lives, and find a gentle, undisturbed sleep, knowing their future is their own and their understanding of justice is ever growing.